Well, given there is very little to talk about in ways of news since the title ended last time, let's talk about some interesting things and the build-up to Las Vegas, starting with, I suppose, Franco Colapinto. Is he overrated, or is this a ploy to get the Falklands back?
I think
That's not the real question.
But I think it's still the former rather than the later.
Yeah.
By the way, Argentina. Oh,
Yes.
no, I won't go there. I was gonna,
No, go
I
on.
think
Go on. What were you going to say?
a lot of Germans there, aren't they?
Yeah, there was a weird thing. A lot of German people started showing up after World War II and around the late 40s.
Wonder what happened, you know?
I think it was just the skiing resorts. You know how Germans love to ski. I imagine that was it, yeah.
Has to be
yeah.
that.
Sure.
Had some very typical dueling scars.
Yeah.
Wonder why.
There's a couple of towns there, actually, where they still have, like, German signs and speak German and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should not talk about that. We should actually focus on Formula 1.
Don't mention the war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, so Franco Colapinto, by the way. And by the way, we are not going to talk about who he's dating and why, whatever
Who
nonsense.
cares?
Please, no, we don't give a damn.
Yeah, who
We're not going to
cares?
talk about that. But just as a driver, I think it's, if you look at the kind of rumors that have been going around, Red Bull being willing to pay around $20 million for him to buy out his contract.
Is it confirmed that they were going to pay that? Because I thought that the key issue was they weren't willing to pay that. Or they were.
Apparently, again, it's a lot of rumors and I don't think anything is as substantiated for now. Assuming, but the thing is there is interest. That is quite clear because, I mean, Horner openly went to the Williams motorhome and...
It was just
met
for the coffee,
guys.
though, I heard. So.
Yeah, of course it was. The thing is, we've had Franco for 5 races now. Are we just jumping the gun when it comes to him?
See, I don't know, because I think we do need to be careful that we've had these kind of one-hit wonders or kids that look really good for a few races. But
Yeah.
I think there's a difference. Like, obviously, Nick de Vries was the outlier that caused everyone to maybe go, oh, let's be careful. But I think that was one race in exceptional circumstances for Williams. And Helmut Marko and Red Bull kind of pulled the trigger too quick there. In this case, I don't know, because, I mean, you're talking about some difficult tracks, some difficult conditions. One of the things that stood out for me was, I can't remember which race it was, but he had the crash in FP1 and how much he bounced back and came back into the race, and I think finished in the points. I think it might have been, yeah, but he finished in the points, I think, in that race. The thing for me is, when it comes to Formula One, if you've got kind of the raw pace and the right mentality, that seems to be the main thing. And it's hard to see that in one race. You know, you can get lucky with one race going your way. But I think even just a 5-race segment, he clearly has the right mentality, because it seems like even when, like that crash, when things go horribly wrong, he just puts his head down and continues on with it, which is great. He seems to be able to kind of banter away with the staff as well, which shows that he's obviously not feeling too much pressure from it, like some rookies would be. And then in terms of just raw pace, I mean, you can only, because he's in a Williams, you can only really compare him to his teammate. And I think the problem is you can jump to the gun too quickly, and Albon has just been having some difficult races, so it's hard to say whether there's, you know, complete parity there, what it would look like over a whole season if Albon was having a better time. But given you can only compare those, a 5-race example and how good he's been doing, how close he's been, I think, like, it's hard to call whether he's overrated, but I think I could definitely say he's worth a punt. Like, he's shown that he is worth a chance in F1, especially when you look at some of the other drivers who've made it into F1 that probably shouldn't have. Like, I mean, let me put it to you this way. If you had a choice next season between Joe and Colapinto, it would be Colapinto, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah, but we are not making that comparison, right? What
No,
we're
we're
doing
not.
right now is we are picking a driver and placing him next to... We're placing him in the toughest seat in Formula 1 right now. Being a teammate to Max Verstappen.
See, the teammate to Max Verstappen, I think, could... That's a very flip of the coin choice, isn't it? Because, I mean, pace-wise, he's probably not going to be there. Do you know where I think where I constantly keep thinking that Horner is looking at this is that I think after Mexico with Lawson and Perez, I think Horner is more concerned about mentality than anything else. He wants someone that has good pace, but has the mental capability of being in that kind of pressure cooker for a couple of years. And I think it's like he's seen that even Perez is kind of repeatedly broken under that pressure. And Perez is a very experienced long-term driver. And I think he's seen Lawson in that seat in Mexico under a bit of pressure. And where the pressure wasn't on last year, it has been on this year because Lawson's going in thinking, okay, this is my chance at the big seat. And he's very much kind of not folded under the pressure, but you could see some cracks, like giving Perez the finger, like the way he's talked over the radio. These are little things that most people probably wouldn't think about, but I think Horner is so cautious of it that is the kind of thing Horner's going to think, well, if I'm seeing that now, what's going to happen if he's alongside Verstappen? And potentially is looking at Colapinto and thinking, look, the pace is decent, but we can work on that. But the mentality is the main thing. He's come into a seat, he's had a crash, he's gotten back up, he's raced again, he's been calm, he's been cool, he's been collected, he hasn't let anything get to him. And in that situation, it's been Albon who's looked more under pressure than Colapinto. So if you're just talking mentality, you could see where Horner would consider it. I think the better option would be to put him in the V-carb for a year and actually stake it out and see what the pressure is. But if it is a case of he's just running out of options and needs to make a gamble, maybe it is a better choice than Lawson, because Colapinto has probably got a much higher ceiling in terms of potential, or at least he's on a lower point in the curve, if that makes sense. Like Lawson's pace, I think we already kind of know where he stands. It's not going to be quite Verstappen, but it's going to be it's definitely not going to be Verstappen, but it's going to be a decent pace. Whereas Colapinto might already be near that level, and there potentially could be quite a lot of upside. So I can see why Horner would do it. Do I think it's the right choice? No, the right choice is Sainz or someone with a bit of experience who's good under pressure already, who has proven themselves. The question I have for you, straight out the gate though, is if you had to choose between Lawson and Colapinto for that seat, who are you choosing? Because I think at the moment it would be Colapinto.
If I had to choose, I'll obviously choose Colapinto in that case. I won't put either of them in a Red Bull. I just don't think it makes any sense.
Not right. And
that's
now,
where that's where the whole thing comes up. Because for me, the thing is the way Colapinto is being rated right now. Mm-hmm. Okay, if we compare these two drivers, Colapinto versus Ollie Bearman, who do you think has been the more impressive?
See, I'm probably going to annoy you and other people here, but I think Colapinto. I don't think Bearman seems to me like a capable pair of hands. I know he has some pace from seeing him before, but he hasn't been it hasn't been standout impressive the way Colapinto has. Maybe that is down to expectations though. Maybe it's kind of like I knew kind of Bearman would be good, so it's not, you know what I mean? But yeah, Bearman.
Okay, how would you compare Hülkenberg and Albon? I think because that's where the whole question comes in.
I'm going to pick Hülkenberg 9 times out of 9 on this.
And Ollie Bearman has outqualified him twice in both races.
Yeah, it's
finished
impressive.
Ahead of him in Baku. And
yeah.
And
look,
I'm a huge Hülkenberg
out.
fan. Yeah. See, that's the thing.
Hülkenberg's watching Hamilton and thinking, I'll check out too and chill until I get to next year. Yeah.
He's getting a big bag next season. So anyways, just like Hamilton.
To do very little.
Oh, God. I mean, how much? It's been 5 minutes and we're already into Hamilton slander. So great going.
Good podcast.
Case. Yeah. I think for me, the worry is that the way Red Bull has approached it is they are treating it's something similar to the way I thought they approached the Nick DeVries signing, where they just saw a race and just boom, let's go for him. And here it seems like, okay, they've seen a decent number of races, but going all out for a young driver and trying to put him alongside Max Verstappen, I think even if I'm managing Franco Colapinto, I would not want to take that call. I don't think it's a career suicide. It's a career suicide
Yeah.
for It was a career suicide for Pierre Gasly, who fortunately bounced back. Albon had to sit a year out because of the same thing. But I think sometimes we just do not understand the magnitude of being a Max Verstappen teammate. Because what's going to happen is, when you're a Max Verstappen teammate, if there are 100 people in the factory, 99 are working for Max.
Yeah.
The only one you have is yourself. That's it.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
for a young driver, that's first of all a cultural shock. Secondly, what that does is it leaves you in a very lonely place within the team, and I don't think a youngster should be subjected to that. That's what I just feel.
The problem with that though is that, you know, if you're an F1 driver, you know that no matter where you go, it could go well or it could go badly. And I think if you're offered a top seat, you just take it and you just hope for the best. You know.
You can.
Yeah.
I just.
There are cases. There's cases where it's win-win, isn't it? Yeah, like this is the thing. Like, I think maybe that's just the kind of guy he is. Like, maybe he is just a really, really incredible driver, and we just will see that over the next few years. Because, like, I think both of us, like, I had seen Colapinto in F2 in a couple of races. I think, in F3 as well. And I thought, like, a decent driver, but he didn't like stand out to me. It wasn't like this is a future F1 guy in the way that, like, Bortoleto, for example, kind of stood out. You know, Antonelli stood out. Behrman, obviously, you know, I'm trying to think. There's other ones as well. Even Montoya in F3, you know, seems decent. Not, you know, I don't want to get my hopes up about another Montoya, so I'm not going to. But, you know, like, Colapinto never stood out, and then he gets thrown into F1, and immediately it's, you know, I think what's worked well for him is he's gone up against a teammate that we all know is good. The problem is he's gone up against a teammate that absolutely crippled under the pressure of being Verstappen's teammate. Yeah. So you're still looking at someone where it's like, right, we haven't got a comparison. Like, if he was going up against, I don't know, like, who could you even say? Like, if he was going up against a George Russell and beating him, it would be like, okay, right, this guy is absolutely ready. The problem is our benchmark is Albon. And as good as Albon is, Albon failed to do... Well, Albon just failed to do exactly what they want Colapinto to do, which is to be Verstappen's teammate. So it's just not the right benchmark. So it's really unknown. But as you said, Colapinto has been very, very, very impressive. So, I mean, in Brazil, he crashed on the pit straight under a safety car. Doesn't look great. But
that's understandable.
A lot of drivers had issues that weekend, you know? Yeah. A lot of them.
I mean, 5 or 6 drivers crashed out, so that's that was just the kind of race it was always going to be.
So it's hard to put much pressure on him for that, you know?
Yeah. I think for me, it's just that I need to see more. Yeah. And that's what it comes down to for me, because I think there's enough that he's shown which warrants him a seat in Formula 1 in the near future, in 2025 or whichever way it goes. But does it warrant a seat next to Max Verstappen? I think the problem is, for him to shine in a Red Bull is going to be very hard, and that's where I think the problem comes in. And it's just that I think what he's shown is he's good. He's also shown that he's not a Max Verstappen, and I don't think there are many drivers who can say that they are Max Verstappen. And
I mean, even on the current grid, like, you could say a Leclerc, as much as we rate him, is still not a Max Verstappen until
100%.
Until proven otherwise, you know, like, until he actually beats Max Verstappen. Like, that's...
Which might happen next season, by the way. Stay tuned.
Although Hamilton will probably win. The thing is, I think that the clever choice, realistically, and the only choice that makes any sense to me, is bump Lawson up for 2025 and get Colapinto into the V-Carb for 2025. I don't think either of those things will happen. I think if they're taking a punt on Colapinto, I think he's going to do trial by fire and just put him straight into the Red Bull. Especially if they're going to pay that kind of money. The other thing is, when it comes to the funds, Colapinto, like Perez, comes with a bunch of money, and getting him into that Red Bull would also bump up the amount of cash, which means that even if it's a failure,
Even
you're
in
still
the
making
Argentina
some
race,
money. Yeah,
apparently.
like you're still making a good bit of cash though. So it's
Yeah.
kind of it's offsetting the downside in a way that Lawson can't, because Lawson either needs to be right beside Verstappen or like backing him up the whole way through the season, or it's a failure because he doesn't bring cash in. So you could kind of see where Colapinto makes sense. I still feel like there is a solid chance that we could be seeing Ricardo in that seat in Bahrain. Like, I genuinely think there's still an outside chance it could happen,
Yeah. Me too.
which is
By
insane.
the way,
Insane.
I know.
It's a
But
really bad view of Red Bull, though, right? They have two teams, and they used to have an amazing junior program, and
Yeah.
they're in this position.
Honestly, Marco fucked it up. After Max, he's kind of taken it easy. It just seems that way. There hasn't been any breakout star from the team for a long time now.
I think
yeah.
it's Helmut Marko, but it's also like Verstappen fans will love Helmut Marko more than more than Horner a lot of the time, because Horner's British, I imagine. But
No. For
it's
what
'cause
happened
Jos
earlier
Verstappen.
this season. Yeah.
yeah. But it's a mixture of Helmut Marko and, ironically, the side that Jos sided with, which is the board of Red Bull, because it was the board of Red Bull that wanted the second team to be like a sister team and not be a junior team anymore. And Dietrich didn't want that, but Dietrich was in his last days, and when he went, that was that. And it was kind of a compromise by Horner and Dietrich to kind of keep control on the side of Red Bull.
Yeah.
And it's left them in this silly position. And that's why you should never have a board run an F1 team, which is what Jos Verstappen wanted, which is why Jos Verstappen is an absolute moron to anyone listening. Yeah. Anyway.
You're not wrong. But there's one thing, I think there's one angle that we are actually not touching on, and that's James Vowles.
Yeah.
Do you think he'll be willing to let go of Franco Colapinto? I'll just give you my view. I think if the true test of James Vowles' mettle as a team principal will be whether he lets Colapinto go or he makes him stay. I think it's going to come down to that. If he's worth his salt, he's going to keep him. Come what may. Doesn't matter what kind of money. Because look, Williams is not short of money now.
Yeah.
Vowles has been consistently talking about how money is no more a problem for him. It's just building the team. They have the resources, they have everything. So it's not like money is going to be a deciding factor in this case. 20 million, 30 million, whatever. I just don't think if he's worth his salt, Colapinto is his find. And I think if he envisions Williams being a front runner or something, he will try to build a team around Colapinto. That's what I think he would want to do.
Yeah, I think like it just depends, doesn't it? Because what he's going to do is, I think he's going to try and keep him for 2025, or at the very most loan him out. And I think Red Bull probably doesn't want a loan agreement. That's not very Red Bull. Yeah. And I think they've jacked the price up to kind of go, look, do you really want to get into this more than anything else? Because I think from Colapinto's side, obviously it's going to be a case of, no, we'll let you go, but they'll have to pay a good price in a way to kind of stop them from taking you. And then they're probably saying to him, look, stick around because 2026, anything could happen. You know, let's try and keep you for 2026. The problem Vowles is going to have is he's got 3 very high caliber drivers there, and 3 into 2 doesn't go, and it's who do you drop in that situation? Because
Albon.
At the moment you drop Albon, but as we were just talking about, we've only had 5 races. So what happens if over next season it swings? You know,
I think in 2020, ideally, what I think Vowles would want to do is, ideally he would have wanted Colapinto to go to Audi for a year and then come back. But since that is not happening, what he would want to do is keep Colapinto as a reserve driver, keep him alongside him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he wants him to go to Super Formula or do a season there. I doubt that he wants him to do that.
I think he wants him focused. Yeah.
Extensive simulator work. Just something that I think both Russell and Ocon did with Mercedes. Keep doing that, and a year later just put him in the car. Because
Yeah.
I think there's whoever is ahead out of Albon and Sainz, I think that is the one they're going to keep, and the other guy is
Yeah.
probably going out of the door.
I
'Cause-
think the
yeah.
biggest issue as well is that it's kind of like the insurance policy for the moment as well, because like there's no, like, as much as James Vowles is pushing the team to be like a front runner by 2026, that is still a tall order. And like if anyone else said it, we would laugh at it, but when James Vowles says it, we take
Exactly.
it seriously.
Yeah.
But like Sainz, you still have to bear in mind, like, you know for a fact, if anything happens at McLaren or Red Bull or even potentially Mercedes and a seat opens up, you know that Sainz is gone, because Sainz knows time is running out and he's going to take whatever the closest to the front option is. So I do think for 2025 he is thinking, right, I need an insurance policy for this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you got to feel bad for Albon as well, though, because Albon kind of, like, the team kind of built itself back up around Albon, and he could end up getting thrown away because of this. And if he gets thrown out of Williams, I think that's it. Like, there's no
No, I think he
maybe.
can still go to a Haas or
maybe
whatever
Yeah.
else is
Yeah.
there, because there are still teams, right? They can take him up. A solid
Yeah.
midfield performer tends to find a way, right?
True. Yeah. Yeah. Look at Hulkenberg and stuff, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, he's also, I mean, most probably, yeah, again, Audi maybe. But the thing is that there will still be options open in 2026, because after
Yeah.
this season, I think I'm not sure there's any other F2 promotion that we are going to see from 2025 to 2026. There isn't any, unless Arvid Lindblad is that good. We will
Yeah.
probably not see another new driver. Again, we'll see a
Well,
similar thing that happened.
I
this
mean,
season.
we're probably going to see Yuki get dropped, so there'll be a space open somewhere. I just don't see Yuki going anywhere else, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like,
that's
he's
true,
been
that's
overlooked too long, and the only reason he's kept around is the Honda money. And like, I can't, unless Lance Stroll goes to WEC and Honda make a real push for it. I think even in that case, you're talking about 2026. It's Adrian Newey's Aston Martin in a different guise, basically, with Honda. I don't think he's going to want a Yuki. I think they're going to want, like, if Lance does move aside, I think they're going to want like a superstar young driver in there, as opposed to, alongside Alonso. And I don't think Yuki doesn't fit that bill, and Aston Martin doesn't need Honda's cash. So it's like, go away.
It does appear that Honda does not have much sway at Aston Martin, which is weird.
No, it's because Aston Martin are paying Honda for the engine. It's not the other way around. Yes.
Oh.
But that was, as far as I remember, unless things have changed over the past year, the people I spoke to at Aston when the deal was being put on the table was essentially that, I don't know if it was because of Lance, this was my thinking at the time, but essentially because they knew that Aston Martin had input in, like, in the driver decisions at VCARB and so on, with,
You mean Honda had input in VCARB?
Honda had input at VCARB with the driver decisions in Red Bull. And basically it was for like $10 or $20 million a year. So it's not like big money for you and me, not big money for a guy like Lawrence Stroll. Stroll basically said, like, no, all decisions are ours, and all of this, like, we'll take your input, but this is our team and you're like our works partner. And essentially he was like, we'll pay you for the engine, and that way it's fully like in control of Aston Martin.
Wow.
So I think it was like $100 million contract for the engine. So they're not going to take any
4-year contract.
Yeah, which is a really good deal, but it's also like, it's also
Basically
Lawrence Stroll's way of saying, like, there's a
Yeah.
barrier here. This is so.
Maybe smart, I guess. I don't know.
I think so.
But
I think so, because if they took free engines and like $20 million, it's harder to then give them the middle finger when you're like, no, Yuki's not coming in because we have Lance Stroll. Like, it's.
I mean, there's an. That's the sad part, right? I mean, you're replacing one paid driver by basically another funded driver. So
Yeah.
Anyways, I mean, just to wrap it up, I hope Colapinto does not go to Red Bull, because I think he is a bright prospect, but we don't really know exactly where he is.
Mm-hmm.
But if he does, oh god, I hope he lands on his feet. That's the that's the only thing that I actually
On
have
the
in mind.
flip side of that, though, as well, I was really kind of happy that he didn't go to Sauber, because we know Sauber's not going to have a good year next year. Like, they're not going to put any attention into 2025. And I think young drivers get forgotten about very quickly when they're running around in like P18, P19 for every race.
Yeah, but his benchmark would be Hülkenberg, right? So if he
Sure.
continues to beat him, as I said, Hülkenberg is in no-win position in Sauber for whatever is left of his career, because he's teamed up with a youngster, and if the youngster beats him, he looks bad. If he beats the youngster, he's supposed to beat him.
Yeah. But that's what I mean with Colapinto. Like,
But if Colapinto
the
beats
reason,
Hülkenberg, just imagine.
but the reason Colapinto looks great is not just because of Albon, but because the Williams is sneaking into the points and having these amazing drives. So he looks good. Whereas if you put a youngster into like into a Sauber and he's running around P19, P20, even if he's like P19 and Hülkenberg is P20 every race, it's still like no one's paying attention. It's not, there's all of a sudden, say Bortoleto is in a Williams in that situation, right? Obviously it's not going to be. But my point is, if there's another young driver who's sneaking into the points, the attention completely goes from Colapinto to that other driver. And
happened with Russell as well, right?
Yeah,
for a while.
Exactly. And I mean, if you look at even like, Mick Schumacher, I don't rate him highly now, like obviously, but I think there was some potential there. And I think if he had gone to a team, like if Mick Schumacher had have gone straight from F2 into Williams, a team that does actually look after its young drivers and gives them the full chance and trial.
With Fred Vasseur,
I think there's a chance he's still running around as a midfield driver, you know. But because he went to Haas at a time when Haas was not only last, but was just not good at looking after rookies and was making all these mistakes, and he was against Mazepin, so he couldn't even really show. And then he did actually perform decently alongside Magnussen, So I think that there's two sides to it. Like you said, going up against Verstappen could be career suicide, but I think lounging around at the back of the grid could also likewise be just that's it, So
let's see. Let's see what happens.
Let's see.
Yeah, moving on to the next thing, by the way. So again, it's just something I've seen recently, and I think it's about time we address something like this, because I saw a post from one of the Verstappen fans who said that in Las Vegas we are going to see 19 talented and the best drivers in the world, and one Sergio Perez.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's utter rubbish. I mean, that's utter rubbish.
Yeah, because it's not. It's Sergio Perez and Lance Stroll. Like, come on. No, I'm joking.
But I think Sergio Perez right now, he's being unfairly piled on, because it's just the case of people tend to forget how good he is, and who he's teamed with, and in which team he's actually a part of.
Yeah. Like, I think the thing is, it's very easy to do this if you haven't. I think for me, that's a signal you just haven't been watching the sport very long, because this essentially is just like, if you go back over the years, whenever a driver, even a capable driver, is alongside someone who is the out and out standout, just superstar of the sport at that point, the entire team focus shifts to that driver. And that is just mentally, it's destruction for that driver. Like, there's a lot of people who think Bottas is a far better driver than Perez, right? Which I don't think so. I think Bottas is a far better qualifier, but not a far better driver, right? And you can see that over the career. And like, Bottas had less of an excuse because he was driving a car that was much easier to drive, right? In a situation where Toto very much looked after both drivers. It wasn't the kind of all out, just like everything goes to the one driver situation that they have at Red Bull. So it's completely different. And one of the best ways to look at it, I think, is look at the mental toll it put on a driver like Mark Webber to be in Red Bull alongside Vettel. Like, you could see Mark Webber was a driver, and that was at a time when Red Bull wasn't as kind of one-sided as it is now. Like, Red Bull was still a young team that tried to give both a chance, but even when they swayed,
never a look. And I think a lot, that's where I hate the whole British bias nonsense when it comes to broadcast. Red Bull was as down the middle as it gets, And
Yeah.
one of the biggest proponents of it, one of the biggest people actually talked about it was Mark Webber.
Yeah.
He made it clear. He said, and I still remember it was the inaugural race in Austin where Felipe Massa was supposed to break the seal of his gearbox and take a 5-place grid penalty. Why? Because he had qualified ahead of Fernando
Yeah.
Alonso, and Alonso had to be on the cleaner side of the track.
Mhm.
And for that, they broke the seal, the
Yeah, yeah.
gearbox seal. And Webber was questioned if he would ever do something like this, and I think he said something on the lines of "over my dead body" or something like that.
Yeah.
He said, "I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not a second driver, and
So
that kind of nonsense, that kind
whereas
of bullshit does not fly with me."
whereas Red Bull now would do that. Like
Yeah.
they would absolutely do that type of thing. The Red Bull back then didn't. But even back then, you could see the pressure Mark Webber was under. And Mark Webber was an experienced, very capable driver as well. And he was repeatedly put in these situations, some of them by Vettel just being Vettel at the time, because Vettel was ruthless, which again, I think a lot of young fans don't realize how good Vettel was.
Yeah.
But look, it's not that Sergio Perez is a bad driver. For me, it's the same as Ricciardo. Like, Ricciardo went into a situation where he couldn't get a grasp of the team of the car, and the team wasn't capable of helping him with the car, and they didn't understand what the situation was. They couldn't fix it. And then as soon as that confidence breaks, it's very, very difficult to get that back. Because in Formula One, the driver's confidence has to be so high because you don't want to be thinking inside the car at all. You want all of it to basically come naturally, and whatever is left over for thinking should be thinking about strategy, like is that dry line coming up, all these different things that they need to worry about. And I think you can clearly see Sergio Perez has just been broken by whatever has happened over the past year. His confidence is just gone completely. So it's not that he's a bad driver, his confidence is just gone. And if people don't think that's the case, then right, you also have to admit then, I'm sorry, but clearly Lewis Hamilton is just washed and George Russell is by far a better driver. Which, I think the fact is Hamilton, not only I think Hamilton is not at his peak, but his peak was very, very high, but also his confidence has clearly been broken this year in that car. And at this point, he just kind of has said to himself, right, instead of trying to regain my confidence...
Can't be arsed.
Yeah, basically, instead of trying to get that confidence back and drive for it, he's just switched off and thinking, right, I'll just focus on next year. Perez doesn't have that luxury, so it gets even worse because he's trying to fix it and getting knocked, and the confidence goes lower and lower and lower and lower. And Daniel Ricciardo is a perfect example of this. Look at how many people now are like, oh, Daniel Ricciardo was just overrated. He was never a good talent. And it's like, that's not the case, though. His confidence was just smashed at McLaren. And once it's gone, it's very hard to get back.
And I think there are two bigger examples as well here.
I'm sure there's loads, yeah.
I mean, just in the last decade or so, Kimi Raikkonen, 2013, 2012, he was one of the top 3 or 4 drivers in Formula 1 at Lotus.
Yeah.
Why? Because, first of all, he had James Allison, who has the ability to listen to the drivers and build the car accordingly. The cars are built on his inputs. After 2013, he went to Ferrari. He was awful in 2014. He had no clue how to drive that Ferrari. And the reason being, the entire car was built around Fernando Alonso and Fernando Alonso alone. What was the bigger worry? It was obvious that they didn't really give a fat fuck about Kimi throughout that season in 2014. His pit stops were slower. His strategies were piss poor. There were times when he was almost forgotten by the team. Why? Because, and I think this is something which was pointed out by Felipe Massa, where he said that after German Grand Prix 2010, where the whole Fernando is faster than you think happened, he said as soon as that race ended, the entire team, he specifically said, he said that if there are $100 coming to the team, 99 of them went to Fernando Alonso. And I had zero input. I was supposed to test the parts, but my input and everything went into making the car faster for Fernando.
Yeah.
And that's how the entire team worked. And until 2013, everyone thought Felipe was washed. He was pathetic, he was poor, he was And if you look at his results, the kind of scores that he had compared to Alonso, they were below par. Specifically, when we talk about Felipe Massa, it was, I think, until 2013, you can say that he was probably washed. From 2014, 15, 16, he almost won a couple of races. He got multiple podiums, was a decent benchmark for Valtteri Bottas as well. I think ultimately his performances against Bottas led to Bottas getting a seat at Mercedes. So it's just the kind of environment a driver is in. And I think I've said it multiple times now. I think Checo is foolish that he's actually, pretty much going all in with Red Bull.
Yeah.
Probably it's the right thing or wrong, I don't know. I think it depends on the kind of appetite he has when it comes to his career. But ideally, I would have rather suggested maybe go to Audi.
Yeah.
Build a new career.
Yeah.
It's a massive brand. The money would be there, and plus the exposure would be there. And at least he won't be treated as just a supporting act in that particular team, right? And he could actually redeem himself, because right now if he retires, the last couple of years, 2-3 years have been very damaging to his legacy, right? Before that, he was considered a strong midfield driver. Remember 2020, everyone was
King of the
clamoring for
midfield.
him
Yeah.
to get a seat at Red Bull. And he's done his job, to be honest. I don't think he can do anything more at Red Bull right now.
Yeah.
He should take yeah.
Like, surely he knows. Like this, the only problem with saying this is athletes like this don't ever consider this, but like surely he knows he's not going to beat Verstappen at Red Bull.
Of course.
Like you would assume he knows that regardless.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't. Like, F1 drivers are a bit bonkers like that. They assume they can win and it's everything is working against them and they'll come back. But yeah, I think he may look back at not taking the seat in Sauber, which he definitely could have gotten if he wanted it.
Yeah.
As a mistake, because he could have had one difficult 2025 season, right? 2026 may have been difficult, but then he at least would have been driving for Audi, big money.
Exactly.
Like it could, and whatever he did at that team would have been seen as like, this is a solid drive from him,
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, like you've got huge sponsorship deals then with Audi and Volkswagen all over Latin America. Like, money wise, he could have made a fortune, restored some of his legacy as this like brilliant midfield driver who just wasn't good enough for the top, which is fine. There's plenty of those drivers.
Exactly. I think if Valtteri Bottas is retiring right now, I don't think Valtteri finds a way back to Formula One, by the way.
No,
this is his last season, last 3 races, that's it. He'll be the reserve driver at Mercedes, the reason being Toto. He manages him, so he's...
Yeah.
Again, Toto deserves a lot of credit for looking after most of his drivers. So that's at least a good thing from him. But it's just that...
Don't tell Team LH that.
Yeah. That was fun. Yeah. Anyways, so... my chain of thought completely...
Sorry, that's my bad.
Yeah.
Apologies.
So it's just that when it comes to Bottas, I think he had a somewhat similar career to Checo, where he proved himself in the midfield. Checo proved himself in the midfield, then got an opportunity at McLaren. McLaren proved to be a dud. It proved to be a dud itself, and then his stint was not that good.
Yeah.
Then he's come back and he's proved himself again. Then he's got a shot at Red Bull, and okay, he did the job. 2021, even Max would say that Checo played a role in him winning the championship, and there's no denying that.
Yeah.
So he's done his bit, and either he's looking at a lifetime ambassador role with Red Bull, because that is something that Daniel is also apparently getting now. If that is what he's looking at, then fine.
Yeah.
But if he's not looking to retire, and being forced into retirement is probably a bad thing when there are teams which could make use of his services, is what I'd say. So
maybe it is just like there is another side of this which we're not thinking about, which is maybe it is a case of like he has this 2-year contract with Red Bull, right?
Yeah.
He's hoping he gets it, but even if he doesn't, maybe the payout to buy him out is huge, and maybe he just doesn't want to go somewhere else until they basically force him out to get that cash, and he's thinking, if I get kicked out, at the end of this season, I can possibly find somewhere anyway for 2026 and avoid a 2025 difficult season in a Sauber, for example. You know,
The-
I don't think
I
it
don't think
pans
Checo
out.
comes back.
Neither do I. I don't think it pans out, but I'm saying maybe that's the thinking within the team. You know,
Yeah.
within his team. I mean,
Yeah.
because
Not
like
a
I said,
smart one.
drivers always paint themselves as far better off than they are. You know, they always back themselves.
Yeah.
So,
I think I honestly realized something like this when I heard the Julian Palmer episode on the Beyond the Grid, and he talked about how earlier in the season Hulkenberg had a better fuel filter or something, which helped him be ahead. And it was very funny. He said that in the second half, when the FIA took the fuel filter away, I was much closer to him, and it was very neck and neck between us.
yeah.
And I remember watching that season, and he was nowhere close to Hulkenberg. And just to double check, I went back and saw, and that it's
No.
not even a debate. So
Yeah.
it was
No.
funny how he viewed it that way and how he painted that picture. I mean, of course, he rated him highly. He said that he's basically a career killer, where he killed my career and then he's killing Magnussen's career right now. But it's just interesting. Interesting mindset.
It's just like I think it's the way you need to be though if you're a competitive athlete,
Yeah.
because like the moment you think you're not good enough, the whole thing just falls apart. You know, like, and this is what we saw with Daniel Ricciardo. Like, I think if Daniel Ricciardo had have come into Red Bull, into VCARB this year with complete old confidence, even if the talent was imperfect and he needed to work on it, but if he had to come in and just thought, I can beat Max Verstappen, if he still had that mentality,
Yeah.
I think he probably would have whitewashed Tsunoda over the course of the season, and we could have been having a very different thing. And I think that's how important confidence is in these things, that people don't like to talk about it because it's so intangible, and it is an excuse, but it also is a reality. You
Yeah.
know, but it's really hard to kind of.
And that's
it's hard
what
to back up,
worries
you
me
know.
about Lewis as well. Cause look, once it's gone, it's not coming back.
The problem is it's lost, right? And his thinking will likely be that it's not the confidence, it's just a bad year, and he's expecting to jump into the Ferrari and immediately have to come back.
Yeah.
And I think what could happen is if it doesn't come back quickly, it's just gone. It's like, oh, it's not the confidence.
Reality
it's
is
not the
going to
team,
strike at that case. Because look, he
Yes.
spent the last 3 years talking about experimentation, the car stuff. Look, Lewis made his name being a driver who would actually override a car or drive over the kind of limitations that are there. But
Yeah.
now you see him not being able to do that while his teammate is able to get that done and even fight at the front in Brazil. So
Yeah.
it's
I think even the race we're talking about this, they were like, you know, he has had tricky cars and so on. It's like, that's fine, but that excuse only flies for so long, especially when your teammate isn't having the same complaints.
yeah.
And, you know, you can... The problem is, like, it's fine for the fan base to go, oh, it's sabotage, you're changing the parts and so on.
Yeah.
But Lewis Hamilton, even if he believed that for a second, will know deep down that just isn't true.
Yeah.
So there's only so long you can ride that excuse internally before you go to another team, you experience the same thing, and you go, oh, it's me. And that's when we see drivers kind of decline. And the only driver I can honestly say I never have seen that happen to for a second, and we've talked about it, is Alonso. Alonso will literally sit there after crashing in P20 and be like, yeah, the tires are gone, put me in Verstappen's car, I'll beat him. You know, like, that's how confident he is, that he's like, oh, I am the best. Like, it doesn't matter. I am the best.
Precisely.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of examples of that. Valentino Rossi, quite famously, I think he's probably one of the only MotoGP riders to race until 37, 38. That's how long he did that. And for him, his career started to decline as soon as the bike went. When the bike went, the adaptation and everything, the motivation dropped. Once that happens, it's a very slippery slope. And I think maybe Lewis is I think it started in 2022 that the whole, the shoulders started dropping and you start blaming the team. You do it either subconsciously, you do it in a very deceptive way, but it comes out. It slowly starts coming out, and I think it's just I hope it's not the case, because you look, a Lewis Leclerc potential championship battle is, I think it's
It would be
great for the
amazing.
numbers. If we see that, awesome. Helps our channel grow, helps me, helps you. And it's just that we hope that happens. If it doesn't, I'd say I told you so, because I would be a bit surprised if that does
I
happen.
just can't see it. Like, I think the only reason outside of Alonso's kind of absolute self belief that I just think
It's the
Lewis doesn't
motivation
have
as
that.
well, right? Alonso has a
Yeah.
chip on his shoulder where he thinks he was wronged in 2007, and he has been unable to right that wrong. And all he's trying to do is he's just trying to prove to everyone that, look, I'm that good. And even though everyone says that he's that good, he just feels that he does not, and I think he's also right in that sense. He does not get the
See,
recognition that even a Max or a Lewis is getting right now. I think
see,
that hurts him.
I don't. I think there's a difference in one way, to be honest with you. I actually don't get the feeling from Alonso that he's trying to prove anything to anyone.
Okay.
I think it's just a case of he, in his mind, is like, no, I am the best. And the only reason I don't have 20 championships is because teams, drivers, and team bosses have fucked me up. Or I made a mistake with this because I was young and stupid, but I'm not that guy anymore.
Yeah.
And basically, he thinks he. Whereas I think drivers like Hamilton, Vettel as well, and I think Verstappen up until the first championship, they are actively trying to prove things to people. And I think that's the difference with Alonso. He's not trying to prove anything. He's just like, I know I'm the best, and it's everything around me that's gone wrong. It's not me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to change anything. I don't need to prove anything. I am the best. And if I was in Verstappen's car, I'd be winning the champ. I think that is genuinely how he thinks. And I think by going to other series and being brilliant in other series,
Yeah.
he was just like, yeah, look, I am the best. It's the car. It's the team. It's not me, you know?
I mean, yeah,
Whereas I
I
think
just-
Hamilton has that need to prove it still. He still has that kind of... I don't think it'll ever go away, because I think Hamilton grew up in a situation where the odds were genuinely, to give him credit, stacked
Yeah.
against him. And he proved everyone wrong. And now it's that feeling again of, oh, I'm not, he's more trying to prove everyone else wrong, I think, than having the self-belief. And I think that's where things start to go downhill. I saw it with Vettel. It was kind of like he was continuously trying to prove to himself that he was still there. And when you don't fully believe it, it doesn't fully happen. You know, like Verstappen wins every weekend, Senna won every weekend, Schumacher won every weekend, because like Alonso, they know they can do it. There is no doubt in that at all. And I think once that doubt creeps in, it's just, it's on its way out. And that's probably the biggest reason Norris, like outside of McLaren, that's probably Norris's biggest struggle this year. I don't think that he doesn't have that 100% self-belief either.
Yeah. He's not, and he's not a bastard at heart. And you need to be that. You need to be that to be the best at what you do. Yeah. I think that's enough about Sergio and and even the other
and everything else.
Yeah. I think there's something similar to Lewis Hamilton. I think we kind of should touch on it, because again, this was a topic on X today. The ground effect era. So apparently this season there has been around 20 to 25% drop in overtakes, and we are back to the levels that we had pre 2021.
Yeah.
So again, there's a lot of discourse around whether the ground effect era was a failure of sorts. And the reason behind it is, first of all, I'll tell you the reason behind it. First of all, the reason is that the cars, it led to 2 dominant seasons. And third season has been good. Secondly, it has led to cars that are honestly pathetic to drive in terms of they're piss poor in slow speed sections and brilliant in fast speed. Yeah. Then there is the ride factor, where it hurts the back, the porpoising and everything, and because they're very, very close to the ground. And again, it has led to injuries and back problems for almost every driver.
Yeah.
And finally, they have not achieved the goal they were supposed to in terms of racing and overtaking, where we're back to the levels of pre-2021. So are they a failure in your view, or a success? I don't know, success is a still subjective thing.
See, the thing is, I do think there's been to be honest, the problem with this is it's kind of like every era of Formula One. There's some successes and some failures, and it kind of depends on how you balance those out, right? So, like when it comes to this series right now, a lot of the credit doesn't actually go to the regulations. It goes to, I think, the cost cap and the aero restrictions, because that's meant that it's been very hard to just pump money in, pump time in, and run away with it. Like, it's been much, much harder to do that. However, some of that credit also goes to the fact that these are some... You know what, actually, maybe I'm wrong here, but these are simplified regulations. But in saying that, they haven't been as simple as everyone kind of expected them to be.
So what you mean is prescriptive, in the sense that
there's less scope for
innovation.
Yeah, yes. But then again, it has been very complex in terms of getting the aero balance right as you start reaching different levels. I still think they've been a success in terms of dirty air. There's been less overtakes this year, but I do think part of that as well is just something that's naturally going to happen when you get cars that are closer and closer in field spread, and you have things like DRS that just makes... When you're really close in field spread and everyone's basically playing the same strategy, DRS essentially becomes just an inherent problem as opposed to a benefit, because you can no longer overtake because the cars are so close that essentially the offset doesn't make any difference. So you just get these trains for miles and miles.
I'll play the devil's advocate. Jeddah 2022.
Yeah, sure. Brilliant race. Amazing.
Max versus... was it Leclerc?
Yeah, but that's the first year of a regulation set.
There was one in Ocon versus Alonso as well. The two battles in that.
Yeah.
They were similarly paced cars, right?
First year of a regulation set, they were able to overtake. There was very little dirty air. So, like, the thing is, it did knock the dirty air down. But the problem with this is, like, people like to look at it in a silo and forget that you also have to take into context, like, what is the alternative? Because I think there's a bit too much nostalgia from people on the era before this. Because I don't know about you, I watched the era before this, and the racing, there was some good races, but the races were shit. Like, it wasn't good racing. Everyone keeps going, oh, look, like, they looked better on board, but the actual racing was crap. Yeah. What would happen is you would have the cars follow each other for about 3 laps, and then they would overheat, the tires would overheat, and they had to drop back. So basically you had 3 laps to go with the other person and then forget about it. Whereas at least, while there is dirty air problems once again now, the cars can follow for lap after lap after lap after lap. Like, even in Austria this year, look at like Verstappen and Norris. Lap after lap, they were fighting each other. Yeah, constantly. In 2021 in Austria, I remember it was Verstappen and Hamilton, or maybe it was Norris, I can't remember, but they were basically... They were basically in line fighting each other for about 3 laps, and then it was, tires are gone, like, cars overheating, need to back off. It was like that, you know, so people are like, oh, he was brilliant. It wasn't really, though. It was only brilliant because we got an epic title fight where the cars were so close. But if you actually look at the racing wasn't that great. And I think that's the thing. Like, this is definitely better in terms of actual on-track racing, in the fact that they can follow each other for a lot longer than it was before. Is it as good as they were in 2022? No, because these engineers will always find a way to make, you know, to get around the systems and make just, you know, incremental gains until the dirty air comes back. I do think 2026... they are somewhat going in the right direction of fixing the dirty air with some active aero, because I think, honestly, the more and more...
increases dirty air, right?
It also allows you to overcome it on straights as well and in certain areas. So, look, it's positives and negatives, but I also do think we're at the point where if you want to decrease dirty air and increase racing, you're going to, I think, from just a physics standpoint, have to have some sort of active aero, because it's almost impossible to completely offset it, I think, in my mind. But the problem is the way that the FIA have implemented it is batshit crazy. Like, they've done it only because of the engines. Like, if we had the same engines with some active aero, I think we could get around a lot of the issues with the dirty air, because you could basically make it so... You'd have to go all out, though. Basically, what I'm saying is they're not doing it right, but I think that is potentially the only way to do it.
I think there's one point we are not touching on. It's just that if you remember, I think if you remember in 2021, they showed a stock car for the
Yeah.
2022 regulations.
And it looked nothing like the cars, yeah.
And that's the point. And the problem actually came up, I think it was Mercedes, probably. Mercedes was a team that was lobbying for developments to be made on the front wing. I think that's where the whole problem started, because once, if you remember, Mercedes was the first team to bring new elements added on the front wing
Yeah,
and
yeah.
on the side, which would help the ultimately airflow. Now, once that starts happening, it opens the doors for things to be done on the side pods,
Yeah.
on the engine covers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the problem started. The problem is the regulations in 2022, they were prescriptive, but they were
Yeah.
also strict enough that you don't do development of cars on these specific areas.
Yeah,
Once
yeah.
that starts happening, the dirty air increases, because if it's primarily ground effect, then that is not going to have an impact, because that is
Yeah.
entirely, it's not producing turbulence. Turbulence is produced by all the aerodynamic elements above the body. The
Yeah.
front wings, the side pods, to an extent the rear wing as
Even
well.
the tunnel exit is purposely forced up, so the air comes up anyway, so
Yeah.
it's kind of up and over the car.
Exactly.
That was the whole point.
And that was the whole point. It's just that FIA, and I'm assuming it's because of some kind of lobbying where teams realized that they were otherwise not going to catch Red Bull, stuff like that. And just to facilitate that, they've introduced this thing, and that has led to the current scenario that we're in. Now, the
Yeah.
problem that the scenario we're in right now is, I think for me, the biggest red flag, and something I'm not a huge fan of, is the fact that this is physically hurting the drivers.
Yep.
If the
That's a
ride is
huge
bad
issue.
and their back is look, any other part I'm fine. Back is something that is from someone who has chronic back issues because of lifting too much weights. It's something that once it goes, it goes. You cannot have something like that happening. And I think we heard Fernando Alonso talk about it this season in Brazil. He said that it's too painful. It should not be ultimately bouncing like this. But I'm going to complete the race. Once we have that, it is wrong. I think that needs changing. That cannot go on. And that's where my main concern comes in. Because, again, we all remember what happened in Baku 2022, where Lewis could not get out of the car. A
Yeah.
lot of Verstappen fans think it was an act or something. But you have, at that way, and I remember that that interview where he was doing, you had Daniel Ricciardo right behind me when he was holding his back. You had Norris, who has actually admitted the fact that he cannot do track walks anymore because of
Yeah.
the kind of impact it has had on him. And we don't want that. They are physical in the sense that you have to work hard, they're heavy, or the steering wheel is very hard to navigate. Fine.
Difficult to drive is fine.
Yeah. It should not
Yeah.
be hurting your back. I think that is just a no-no. And drivers have been forced to stay shut because of, again, the FIA, the FOM, the team. They don't want bad publicity and bad PR. But I don't
Yeah.
think this is something that is acceptable. And
See,
that's
you know
where
what?
it makes me, ultimately
Yeah,
question it.
like what annoys me the most though is this is one thing where I think the FIA shouldn't get shit on, where as much as I think FOM should get shit on here,
Yeah.
because you know what I think? I think they had the perfect opportunity where these regulations, right, as much as there's been problems, I think it's a lot of nostalgia, people looking back at 2020, 2021, whatever, because maybe their favorite driver was winning, whatever it is, whatever the reason. But, in either of those seasons.
We need to have a counter below
Yeah.
the podcast. We were number of Lewis Hamilton digs, and the counter keeps going on.
Well, this
and
was a dig on Max Verstappen fans as well, because 2021, you'll look back on fondly if you're a Verstappen fan because he won as well.
They look back on the ground effect even more.
Even
because he
more,
just
of course,
won
yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
more.
Destroyed it, yeah. But, I think the thing is, look, regardless, if you just look back at that, like I said, the racing isn't brilliant. It wasn't brilliant back then, right?
Yeah, it was worse.
The racing is definitely better now, but it also has huge room for improvement. As you said, these have been terrible in low speed. There's been all these different things. And what the FIA could have done, if not for FOM, right? If not for the lobbying from the teams and FOM. What they could have done, and I'll get into why I think FOM needs all the blame for this, is they could have taken all of the benefits and gains that we've had from this, right? The fact that the teams have closed up so quickly compared to what they did in previous eras. So the cost cap and ATR has worked. Everyone went on about Braun when Red Bull started dominating, but he was right. This did actually work. It did, bundle people up. So that has worked. That has been a huge, overwhelming success. These regulations have worked in many ways. The racing has gotten better. Is it perfect? No, it's far from perfect, but it has gotten better. The cars are too big, but what they could have done is taken this exact regulation set, right? Cut off kind of 10%, said, let's make a crazy goal. We're going to make these cars 10% smaller, and we're going to work on fixing the issues with the ride. So basically, whatever we need to do to ensure, like you said, the drivers aren't hurt. And we're going to make sure...
Honestly. That's why it's
sure,
happening.
But they could have easily basically made more of a compromise between ground effect and the
minimum height.
Exactly, but they could have fixed it. They could have figured out a way to fix. The physics are there to fix it in some way.
Yeah,
the teams are learning how to work the suspension. All of these things. They could have taken all of this learning and made 2026 regulations with smaller cars, less dirty air, and better for racing. And instead, FOM went, we want to get manufacturers, so we're going to make a really shit engine that manufacturers want. And now you're going to have to go and build a design that works around these engines. And FIA were basically, and I don't like defending the FIA, but this is a situation where the FIA were basically pigeonholed into having to just compromise everything for the engines. So when we go to 2026 and if we have really shitty racing, no one can blame the FIA. It's all up to FOM, because the FIA didn't push for manufacturers. FOM did. That was all Liberty Media. FIA gained nothing from new manufacturers coming in.
Yeah.
They gain a little bit of oh, look, the FIA runs this. But in terms of finances, in terms of the overall marketing of F1, that is all down to Liberty and the teams.
Yeah.
So they had the perfect chance to take the gains from this and make an even better race car for 2026.
Yeah.
And instead, FOM said, no, we want Audi and Porsche and Volkswagen in. And they got Audi, and then they got Alpine and Renault to basically drop out. And Honda have just stuck around. So it's a net zero gain, basically. And Honda, everyone's like, oh, well, Honda stuck around because of the wrecks. No, Honda stuck around because Honda started winning again. And
for a change, they actually have a reason to stick around.
Honda would have stuck around. If the engine stayed the same for 2026, maybe just increase a bit of power here or whatever, maybe just sustainable fuels completely, Honda would have stuck around anyway. So
yeah, that's the whole thing.
It's a net zero gain, and we've lost Andretti as well. So FOM have basically said, we want manufacturers, we don't want Andretti. They've blocked another team from coming in, and they've ruined the regulations for 2026. As you said, these regs aren't perfect. They're hurting the drivers.
Yeah.
The dirty air issue is back. But the solution to that is not to scrap them and make even worse regulations to help some manufacturers.
I agree with you.
They could have built on this and built something even better. You know, and
I think the problem for me is we had a perfect ecosystem in 2022 when it comes to racing, where you could race brilliantly. It's just that the amount of lobbying that goes on in the background, the amount of concessions they make, and they make it wittingly, unwittingly, or maybe inherently they do these things just to help.
The ideal, just real quick, but the ideal situation there would have been to say, no, look, the entire spirit of these regulations is to get rid of dirty air, and we're going to just focus on dirty air and safety for drivers.
Yeah.
So if you come up with an innovation in these regulations that goes against that spirit, we will let you have it for the rest of the season because that's F1, but it will be banned for next season.
Yeah.
So it's up to you whether you want to put that in. And if they had done that, we could have not only had a close field right now, but really solid racing as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's where they've kind of gone the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just, finally, just to sum it all up, I think I would, for me, the pissed off part is some of the races have been really bad this season. Spa was, what was going on?
It was terrible.
It was just, and that's probably the worst Spa race I've ever seen. I think I've not seen an uneventful race at Spa since forever. Even 2007, 2008 wasn't that. Even then there were overtakes. It's just that probably this is the worst part. And just going off topic, I think this is the worst race in Spa I've seen
It was
since.
dreadful, yeah.
Nothing happened. Honestly, nothing happened. Just a couple of drivers that I think Max undercut. That's it. And there was, again, yeah, of course, there was probably a race for the lead
They shortened
win.
the DRS as well.
Yeah,
It's like,
smart
what
people.
are you doing?
Fucking
Yeah.
idiots.
Either get rid of it or lengthen it. Like, you can't
you
do
just-
something in the middle.
Yeah,
Get
made
rid of it
worse,
completely,
honestly.
fine. Like, because then it's up to the cars and the drivers to brake late, try different tires, whatever. But if you shorten it, you are just literally... Like, how is it that me and you can look at this, not as engineers? Like, both of us, I think, have some sort of engineering background. Maybe, I do computer stuff, but yeah. But anyway. But, like, both of us can look at this as non-experts and go, why would you do it? That's not going to make the racing any better. And yet FIA and FOM are looking at it and go, yeah, good idea, approved. So,
I don't get it. Yeah, I think it's both this and Imola. Even at Imola, they were.
Yeah.
How does it even make sense? But
I mean, and then in Mexico as well, it's like looking at the DRS activation. It's like, how are you looking at that and go, yeah, this is fine? Like, such a simple, all you have to do is literally change some computer code to go, there's an activation code here, or an activation point here now. Or put a couple of sensors
you could
in.
do that actually. You could
They could do it
make it happen.
They could do it so easily. Just put some sensors in. They do it at other tracks, so they could easily do it at Mexico.
Yeah. It's just.
But how are we looking at this and going, there's really clear, obvious, simple solutions here that don't take any regulation change. You just literally change it.
Yeah.
And the FIA is going, oh, it's fine. Like, how?
Yeah. I don't know. Anyways,
yeah,
enough talk about the regulations. I think there's one thing I didn't mention. Again, it's about Johnny Herbert. I saw a video of Josh Revel, one of the F1 YouTubers, and he kind of touched on the British bias thing. He didn't really dip his toes into it the way we do.
But he was very calm and collected. I watched it,
Yeah. I think the problem is... And again, it's not only him. Even Max Verstappen's, I think he's his Team Red Line's community manager, Luke Crane. I think he also talked about it. He said that why Johnny Herbert should not be a steward is, first of all, he's openly against Max when it comes to his comments. Secondly, he gives a penalty, then justifies. No, secondly, he gives a penalty that favors McLaren, then justifies by saying that even McLaren agreed with it. Yeah, that was a stupid thing he did.
Doesn't look good, yeah.
Yeah. Then he's overtly critical of Max almost every time. And finally, he also has allegiances with a betting website. I think he gives interviews to that particular website.
Yeah.
I think when all these things are there, how the hell is he a steward? So what's your take on it? Should a Johnny Herbert be a steward?
Well, look, given I'm an Alonso fan as well as a Vettel fan, I'm not a huge fan of Johnny Herbert anyway, so I don't want to sit here defending him. But like,
I think that's what hurts, because I don't really like Johnny. I'm not a huge fan of his punditry or even Damon Hill. Honestly, the way he's conducted himself for a lot of years. I mean, we've touched on it even in the last one where he's had different views about same incidents depending on the driver involved. And that should tell you everything.
I don't want to defend Johnny Herbert, and I don't even know if he's done a particularly good job. But my problem is I am a creature of logic, which is like, if someone does something that seems biased, then I will look at it and go, okay, well, logically, was it biased? Like, because behind everything, there's like a transaction, there's a reason, there's some inherent bias, whatever. But the problem for me is just all I have to do is, there's a simple example, is just look at Austin and Mexico and just ask myself, was there bias there? And no, there wasn't. Like, when it comes to that decision, it's like in Austin, if there was serious bias against Max Verstappen by Johnny Herbert, Johnny Herbert was he in Austin? He was, wasn't he?
No, he was.
No, it was Derek Warwick. That was in. But like in Mexico, perfect example, right? In Mexico, if we look at that, the two penalties for Max Verstappen, right? That 10-second penalty, I don't care what any Verstappen fan has to say, that was always going to happen. There was deep conversations around this, not only by the stewards, with the press, but with the drivers behind the scenes as well. everyone absolutely 100% knew it would be a 10-second penalty if it happened again after Austin, because there was mitigating circumstances, but they all decided next time it's 10 seconds. That's what's happening.
Even
right?
at the start of the season, this was the change that the FIA made because honestly, because Russell made a mockery of it last season when he would just pass a car. I think he passed a car off track, but since he was in a faster car, he knew he could pull out 5 seconds gap. He just went ahead, didn't give the position back.
And the thing is, this is why in Mexico, Johnny Herbert could have easily he gave the 10-second, him and whoever else was there gave the 10-second penalty for the first incident. The reason I think it's obvious there's not some mad inherent bias and Johnny Herbert is just out to get Max Verstappen is because if that was the case, for that second incident, he could have given him a drive-through easily and there would have been no contesting it because he pushed the driver off track, gained a position off track as well, and caused a collision. There's three things in that one incident. Dangerous driving. He could have easily gotten like 4 penalty points for that, a drive-through penalty, all of these things. So for me, it's like, right, well, there's no bias there. That is a lenient call in reality. So show me the bias. And then when we go back, like if you're going to call out Johnny Herbert for that call or for any other call, then you also have to go and be logical and look at the inverse, which is Derek Warwick in Austin, right? If you're going to call out that, then you have to go and say, well, why didn't we get a situation where Norris got a 10-second penalty and Verstappen got a 5-second penalty for pushing him off? Because in the document, they specifically said that Verstappen did force him off.
Yeah.
So therefore, instead of giving Verstappen a 5-second penalty, we're just going to take 5 seconds off of Norris's penalty. Yeah. And you could easily look at that and go, well, that's biased towards Max. They're trying to help Max out there by not giving him a penalty.
Yeah.
Like, you can make these decisions all the time. So for me, it's like, look, I don't like Johnny Herbert. I don't want to defend Johnny Herbert, but until I actually see some bias from Johnny Herbert, like, show me an incident and show me the penalty he gave, and let's look at that compared to other drivers.
Precisely.
And if he is genuinely giving Max harsher penalties than X driver, then fine. Like, okay, we need to talk about that, and he needs to be reprimanded for doing that if it's wrong. But you can't just go, he's British, Max got a penalty, therefore it's bias. No, that doesn't stack up for a minute. And to be fair, I don't think most F1 fans do, and the people who were doing this are also the people that are calling out Johnny Herbert for red flags and VSCs. So they clearly are morons who don't understand how F1 works anyway, because they don't realize that the race director and stewards are completely separate things. So I don't really have much time for them anyway, because if you're not bothered burning or learning like the basics, then let's not have a nuanced conversation because you don't know what you're talking about. It's just kind of pointless.
Okay, that's fine. Now I'll set a profile for you. I mean, just leaving Herbert's side, if there's suppose a next person, he's associated with a betting website, and at the same time, he has been publicly critical of a driver. Should he be a steward?
No. And Johnny Herbert, I don't think should be a steward. But I think there are two conversations we had. Like, should he be a steward?
Exactly.
No.
I think
has
the
he
point
been biased?
No. Exactly. I think that's where, honestly, I think that's where Max went wrong. Where he's not only Max, his father, but his father has gone wrong in a lot of
Jos
things.
Verstappen said something out of line. Are you kidding me?
It says that when you're going to talk about someone's integrity, at least have something worthwhile to point it out. You had nothing. You honestly had nothing. Mexico is a slam dunk penalty. Whether he wants to crib about it or whatever, it's a slam dunk penalty. There's no two ways about it. And I spent a lot of time today, discussing with a Verstappen fan, and ultimately I found that I was the fucking idiot who was discussing with a Verstappen fan. It's just that you don't do such a thing. What you do is you just raise a complaint. First of all, the entire sequence of events is wrong. If you think Johnny Herbert does not have the ethics to actually adjudicate something like this, raise the complaint before it is done. Before he's part of the panel, or before he has taken the call where he should have taken the call. You're questioning an integrity of a person when he's made the right call. And that puts you at a disadvantage. Simply, as I said, if this is the profile of a person, I think, first of all, Herbert needs to be smart enough. What the fuck is he doing? Why is
Yeah.
he being such a vocal critic and then being a steward? Because it puts him at a situation where he's open to criticism. And that is not how it should be ideally. And again,
Yeah.
it's just, again, somewhere, you have to think that the FIA also does the wrong thing.
The FIA are
Surprise.
incompetent.
Yeah.
They're not biased. They're just incompetent.
Exactly.
They don't have the competency to be biased.
Precisely.
I've
And
said
I think
this for years.
exactly, because what happens is, I think Herbert talked about it, that apparently these stewards, they are contracted for the weekend. That's it. Other than that, they have zero affiliation with the FIA, so they can do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing. He's doing whatever the fuck he wants away from that particular race weekend. But the problem is that the optics of it, they're just poor. It should
And
not
the
be
FIA
that way.
should absolutely clamp down on that. Like all the FIA have to do is say, look, guys, we're not allowing anyone in who's affiliated with gambling
But the
sites, because it
problem
looks.
is it's voluntary, right? These
Yeah,
FIA stewards are voluntary.
But
It's
they
not.
could easily just say you're not being allowed in to be a steward if you're affiliated. The problem is, realistically, George Russell is pushing for it right now with the GDPA. That is the abbreviation, isn't it? The Drivers
GPDA.
Association. GPDA.
Grand Prix Driver Association.
Yes, yeah. GDPA, I think, is the European security thing, I think, or European privacy laws, I think, is what I'm getting confused with. I think that's GDPA.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Good that you guys have that, by the way. We don't.
Well, I'm not there anymore. I'm in Mexico, where there is no privacy. I think they're pushing for full-time paid stewards, and I think that is the right thing to do, because then you would legally have a very simple way to go, look, guys, you are a paid affiliate of Formula One, and therefore you can't be part of a betting site, because that betting site allows you to gamble on the outcome of a sport which you are directly able to intervene in or change the outcome of. So look, Johnny Herbert shouldn't be a steward, but I think this is the problem is, like, everyone wants to just use one thing to prove another nowadays, and that doesn't work, Like, if I came on and we had a discussion about Hitler and I said, yeah, well, he was a terrible artist, it's like, well, I think that's fine, but that's probably the thing we shouldn't be discussing and focusing on. I mean, he's doing other things that we could focus on as the bad point. We don't need to focus on Hitler's artwork, which is reasonably good if you were an amateur artist, but by professional standards, he wasn't a good artist. But it's probably not the thing I'm going to focus on when I'm talking about Hitler. When we're talking about Johnny Herbert, aligning him with Hitler, which is what I should be doing, basically, like, we can focus on his gambling thing and say, yeah, that's a bad idea, but it doesn't mean he's inherently biased. And one thing doesn't cause another. And I think, like you said, with Max and with the fans, like, trying to lump together that he's biased and a gambling site, it just, like you said, it kind of upsets the whole argument. It doesn't make, it doesn't help you. I mean, because basically what you're saying is
integrity by showing an incident where he actually did the right thing. You're not making a case for yourself. You're making a case against yourself in that case. And that's what he did, honestly.
The problem with that is, it just, one thing is, the problem with that, when you start doing that, and I've talked about this with other issues as well, like more important issues like race and a variety of other things. The problem is when you start trying to lump everything together and make all things equal, what happens is, if I can throw one of those things out, then what you've made it easy to do is just go, well, all those things don't matter now. So as soon as you stop taking things in isolation, what you're doing is saying, if I can prove that he wasn't biased, then everything else doesn't matter. And that's where it looks stupid. So what happens is, when Max comes out and says, oh, he's biased because of the passport thing, it's like, now you've just made your whole argument look stupid.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was what happened with him, right? When he, one of the ESPN journalists, they actually, after the race in Mexico, where he said that the something on the lines of, this poor performance was primarily a result of the British media, something like that, because he had consistently talked about how he had the wrong passport or something. Again, it's a dig at Max, but the thing is, he put himself in that situation, and he didn't need to. You make everything British bias, then you basically make nothing British bias.
I think it's Yoss's influence as well, to be honest.
Exactly.
It's not very Max-esque. Like, he doesn't normally say things like that. He's normally
and
fairly
the thing
logical.
is, when he does, ideally, he tends to be taken seriously, but if it is this nonsense, he's going to lose that. And that's just the way
I
it
think
is.
that's the other problem as well, isn't it? Because we're used to Max being relatively sensible and logical and not getting into these stupid discussions.
Yeah.
So when he does something, we take it seriously. Like when the FIA did the cursing thing, the fact that it was Max and we knew he just doesn't talk shite. He's fairly like blunt about what he thinks.
Yeah.
And then he did the whole thing with the FIA. Everyone was like, well done. Well done.
Even
but the problem is,
even in
there's the flip
2022,
side to
if
that,
you
yeah.
remember, he basically he blacklisted Sky Sports
Yeah.
for the race in Mexico.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone was in favor of it because Kravitz was over the line with the kind of nonsense that he pulled.
But then when you do something like this, what happens is the next time you do something, people take it less seriously. 'Cause
Exactly.
It's like,
And he's risking that right now, you know.
Yeah.
And the thing is, how he's risking that is because next season there's very high possibility he's going to be competing against, if not one, if not two, there might be three British drivers. I mean, who knows? Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren, they might be neck and neck. You don't want to be in that situation because, again, one misstep and they're going to pounce on you. You don't want to be there. And yes, that's enough.
I think, look, the final word on that as well is like, drivers getting into that situation as well is bad because, like, if you can't prove he did anything biased, and you're like we've said, he should be removed as a steward because it doesn't make sense the things he's doing. Like, you know, you can't do the things he's doing, and then because the perception is just bad, regardless of whether you're doing anything wrong. The perception is bad.
Yeah.
But the problem is, if you're going to keep trouncing on someone and saying they're biased, then he's going to think to himself, well, fuck it, I'll just give him a 20-second penalty. Everyone's calling me biased anyway, so screw it. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're going, why did I get a 20-second penalty? See, he's biased. It's like, well, it's too late now. You've been calling him biased for ages, and he's just gone, well, I have nothing to lose now. So why, from a sporting point of view, it makes no sense. You've been calling him biased
when he's not been one. And he's actually set an entire precedence where he's not been biased and you've called him one. Now, suddenly, if he is biased and you're calling him one, why would anyone take you seriously?
Yeah. So why they weren't banging the drum of the other stuff and saying, look, this guy can't be gambling, he can't be speaking out about drivers, let's push on that stuff. Yeah. That would have been more of, okay, we take him seriously. But like we said, it's like the bias thing, just, it's going to blow up in your face. Like the Austin rule did for all of the Verstappen fans who then just went, 10 seconds instead of 5. It's like, oh, yeah, whatever, shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyways, I mean, the next thing, I think when we talk about Max Verstappen, I think this particular season, the 4th title is done. I don't think there's much at stake. What's in store for future if you talk about Max? Because I think what I see is there are two possible pathways. One is the path that Ayrton Senna used to take, and the other is the one that Michael Schumacher did. Now, when it comes to Senna, the way he went about his career is, show me where's the fastest team, fastest car. I'll go there and be a part of that team and I'll win. That's one way of doing things. The other way is, I'll go to a team that has resources, everything is there, potential is there, and I'll build the team around me and I'll get it done. That's the Michael Schumacher way. What's next for Max? Because I think it's going to be either of these two, you can say, methods that he's going to choose.
I have to say, I think the only way is the Senna way for Max. And the reason I say that is because Max has said for like ages now, he doesn't plan to be an F1 past 30. And if another driver said that, like even when Lewis says that, whatever, I'm not into my 40s, you kind of don't take it 100% seriously because you're like, it depends on what's going to happen. Whereas I think Max is kind of like, I'm not here just to rack up titles. I'm just here to win every weekend. And that's why for him, it's like at 30, I'll leave and do something else. You know, like this is my plan. And he seems like a guy who'll just stick to whatever his plan is. So I think he does one of two things, which is either he just kind of sticks it out with Red Bull and sees what happens, until 2028 and then goes off and does something else. Or he does the Senna thing, which I think is more likely, which is in 2025, if he loses the championship and they are, the third or fourth team on the grid, and it looks like 2026 is going to be bad. I think he basically calls his performance clause, takes a drive somewhere else, and probably goes on 1-year contracts for 3 years, and just kind of basically jumps from team to team to see who has the fastest and see what happens. Because the thing is, like, he knows, I'm sure, if he looks at any team, including his team at Red Bull, a long-term project puts him well into the 2030s if he tries to do it that way, or at least the early 2030s. So that is already over 30 years of age. So that's like, I think he turns 30 in 2028, right? I think that was the entire point of the contract.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. He's 26 right now. It's 2024.
27 right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, 27.
So he
30,
just
31,
turned 27 and yeah. So
Something
20,
like that.
was it 25, 26, 27? So 28,
4
he'll
more
be
years.
31. He'll be turning 31 at the end of 2028. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see him just kind of jumping into a different seat. I mean, maybe in 2026, if the car is shit and he can't like find another option quick enough, which I think he would, but maybe he does just call it a day early. I don't know. I don't see him doing the Schumacher thing. It doesn't seem to have an interest for him. So it would be more entertaining for us as well if he did the
But
the
again,
kind
it
of Senna
depends,
thing.
right? I think people change. I think
Maybe,
we've seen
yeah.
that with. I mean, I was 100% sure that Lewis was not going to stick around until this late.
Well, Hamilton wasn't. 2021 changed it. That was it.
Yeah.
He would be gone now if it wasn't for 2021.
Yeah. 80,
If he won that
2021
eighth
probably.
Yeah, like if he
That
won that
particular race.
20, if he won that 8th title, I think after 2022, maybe he doesn't even race in 2022, but I think he
does.
leaves. Like, you know,
I don't think
you
he
know,
does. Or he does. He does
No.
basically a farewell tour and then leaves.
Yeah,
That would have been his 2022.
1 year to kind of help the team pass over to
Yeah.
Russell and then goes.
Exactly.
You know,
I think that's what he would have done. It's just, yeah. But again, even in the, I think Vettel is also an example because I always thought Vettel would stick around for long. I think Ferrari wore him down, and the 2 years at Aston Martin, we did not see the kind of progress he wanted. He kind of bailed. Plus, he also had different interests that suddenly come in. It's just, you cannot predict the future. And I think I've seen far too many drivers make this. I think Alonso is also an example, and he's admitted it right now that as soon as he won his 2 titles, he thought the McLaren contract would be his last. But he's here right now. It's 17 years later. So 18 years later. So you never know. It's
sure,
just-
but I think the difference is, I think at the very least, I reckon what Max does is if he's going to build a team around him the way Schumacher did, I think he does it after a hiatus. Like, I think he basically 2025 or 2026. If Red Bull's going really well in 2026, then perhaps he just sticks around till 2028 and finishes off with, 5 or 6 titles, 7 titles, whatever it is. If he gets to 7 titles by 2028, maybe, and they're dominating, maybe he's like, fuck you, Lewis, and takes another year, or whatever, just to be the greatest on paper.
Yeah.
But I could
Yoss would
see
make
if
him
he's
do it, to be honest.
maybe, yeah. But I could see him potentially doing the Schumacher thing if he kind of gets to 26 or 27, and it's like, right, I'm not performing. There's no gap in the team that is performing for whatever reason. It's unlikely he's Verstappen. He could probably jump in there anyway, but maybe there's no
I think
option.
it's not. I think we are overestimating that he can jump into any team, because if there's a Ferrari that's winning and they have a Leclerc, I don't think they just.
Why you upset the balance?
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. So there is
There's no
that,
point
like,
to
that as well. But like maybe he gets to 27, and it's like, right, I'm out. And what he could end up doing is doing like neither Senna or Schumacher, leaving the sport, doing WEC or whatever for a couple of years, winning a title there, doing somewhere else, because we know he's obsessed with other racing series.
Yeah.
So maybe he goes and does other racing series and then comes back and builds a team around him in his 30s, But I don't
That's
know.
what we could see. I think that's the next thing. I think he might leave the sport for a year or so. But again, just what happens with almost every other driver, Raikkonen, Alonso, they go, they find out that the grass is not greener on the other side. It's basically F1 is the pinnacle, and they come back. I think there's going to be some
I just think like the thing with it, the problem is it can change so quickly. Because with Alonso, I think the reason he stuck around is because he didn't get those extra titles, and he thought he was going to go on a run, and it didn't happen. And I think that's it's like that unfinished business
burning inside him.
Whereas I kind of do believe Verstappen when he's like, he has more titles than he kind of aimed to get now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like he's not pushing to get 7 or 8. That can change though if we're on the verge of the 8th. Like, he's not going to retire if he's on the verge of the 8th.
Yeah.
Like, why would you? You know? But if it's 2027 and he's still on 4 titles and he's left and jumped to a different team, then I could see it be like, right, well, I'll take a break from this. And I could see him either coming back or maybe doing something crazy. Maybe he goes like, right, I've got hundreds of millions in the bank and my name is Verstappen. I'm going to try buy a team. You know, like, crazier things could happen. I doubt it as well, but maybe not an F1 team, but he could buy a racing team and spend the rest of his life working on that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, the thing is there's so many options, but I don't think he is like at the moment anyway, I don't see him like a Hamilton or a Schumacher where his ultimate goal is just to have the most titles and most wins in F1.
I don't think he views his career as that. It's quite obvious. I think it was obvious in the very... I honestly was very surprised the way he conducted his first title battle in 2021, where he said that I just need one title, that's it. Just to prove it, once I have it, I'm done. I might even retire. He used to say I might even retire after 2021 if I win the title. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He
it's
doesn't,
weird.
Like, he doesn't come off to me as the bullshitter type either. I think that is genuinely what he's feeling.
Yeah.
But like you said, feelings can change over time. Something could happen. Like, he could next year, like, get into a title fight where, you know, Norris beats him or Leclerc beats him and it's a tight title fight and he wins out. And then it's all of a sudden his mindset changes to, I have to prove. Yeah. Like, so it could change really quickly. Like with Hamilton. We expected Hamilton to be gone after 2021. He's now going to Ferrari, you know, so like...
Yeah. I think if 2025... again, let's change gears. I think it's the best time to talk about this. 2025, again, a lot of talk is around what McLaren is going to do, because next season Lando will still be there. Oscar will be a bit more competitive. The team dynamics might change. Things could happen. But there's maybe a team that is actually going under the radar, and I think it's Ferrari to a certain extent. Even this season, they might be an outside contender to win the Constructors' title.
Yep.
But next season, I'm actually surprised why there's not as much hype around Ferrari as it should be. Because, to be honest, since the summer break, they are the joint fastest team with McLaren.
Yeah.
It's been there and thereabouts. It's been competitive between the two teams. They've maybe been they've probably been a step behind when it comes to operations. I still think they should have won in Singapore. They fucked that up big time.
Yeah.
But still, the performance is there. This season, they started on a better foundation. They've built on it, stumbled a bit, but still they are there now. Where is this team if we talk about title contenders for 2025? Is it ready to fight for title?
I'm not sure what way it's going to go, because Ferrari is one of those teams where it really, like, Ferrari's very up and down, and this season especially it's been very up and down. Mercedes kind of similar. It's had this like real roller coaster. Red Bull dropped off for a while, but you kind of knew where they were and they kind of started fixing their issues and getting back. McLaren's been the one that jumped up and kind of stayed there and continued on this path where their car performance has been really good the whole way through, like since Miami has been getting better and better. Their car performance is great. Their strategic decisions is bad. Some of Lando's mistakes have been bad. Same across the aisle on Oscar. So I think the reason I think people are more hyped maybe about McLaren than Ferrari is that with McLaren over the past 2 seasons, we've seen that they haven't put a foot wrong with car development. When they say they're going to do something with the car, we know the car is going to be there. And the real questions are around the drivers and the strategy. Can they fix those two things? Whereas Ferrari's been the polar opposite. They've had the drivers, but their strategy, well, they've had the strategy at some races, but the main thing is their drivers have been pitch perfect most of the time, and it's the car and the strategy that have been kind of the
team needs to catch up on it.
Yeah,
that's
so
what you're saying, right?
For me, what I'm concerned about in 2025 is I think everyone, mainly Max fans and people who don't like McLaren and Zach Brown for a variety of reasons, have basically been very, very hopeful that Ferrari's year next year will be like, they'll be the ones fighting if it's not Red Bull like, or it will be Red Bull versus
I
Ferrari.
don't think so,
you know?
because if Ferrari is fighting and if Lewis is fighting for the title, I don't think Max fans can digest something like that.
They're hoping for it at the minute because I think the thinking is, well, Max will win regardless, so it's okay if it's Ferrari.
Okay.
You know, and they're assuming it'll be Leclerc, and basically because of Norris recently, they just don't want Norris. But we know how this will go. If it's Leclerc versus Verstappen next year, if Leclerc starts winning after, like, by the mid-season, Leclerc will
first
be the
5
most
races.
hated. He'll be the most hated driver in the world. You know, like,
He's
so,
not perfect. He has this problem,
And he'll be
that
hated
problem,
by-
is mentally weak.
yeah, and he'll be hated, but not only then by Verstappen fans, but also by Hamilton fans. 'Cause, you know, so poor Leclerc next year.
Oh, God.
My worry for the reason I'm not getting excited about Ferrari until the opening of the season is I think Ferrari is one of three teams at the top who basically will decide how their season goes within like the first 4 races. And the reason I think that is, if Red Bull show up with a subpar car at the first few races of 2025, they are going to completely switch focus to 2026 because there's no point, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no point because you're just going to ruin 2026. I think Mercedes may not even focus on the 2025 car as much and may just kind of go, let's come with like a baseline kind of third fastest car and then focus everything on 2026. And 2025 is just to get the drivers ready for 2026. Ferrari, I think, is one of those hit or miss that, like Red Bull, if they come in strong in 2025, they may write off 2026 and try and get 2025.
Yeah.
But if they show up even slightly poor in the first race, like literally, even if it turns out they have the fastest car, if race 1 goes poorly, Ferrari will go, right, shut everything down, focus on 2026. Whereas I think McLaren is the one team that will absolutely just go, if we're fast in 2025, we are focusing everything on 2025.
Yeah.
Like, I think they are the team with the least to lose, so they will just go for it.
Yeah.
And that's why I think McLaren will probably be the ones. That's why I'm less excited for Ferrari, basically.
I think so too. I mean, I think McLaren would be ahead. I think when it comes to Ferrari, what I'm honestly, there are far too many doubts. First of all, I won't be surprised if somehow, somewhere, Ferrari fucks up car development during the winters. I won't be surprised. I truly won't be surprised if they end up turning up in 2026, 2025 with a brand new car which has nothing to do with this one.
Yeah.
That's what Ferrari does. I mean, they have a habit of starting with a clean slate, and that is not advisable when you have a good car. It's just that the amount of unpredictability that comes with Ferrari, it's always going to hurt. And secondly, the problem is, as soon as they start winning, as soon as they are somehow, somewhere, they're sniffing the championship, it won't be a surprise if the Ferrari CEO, Benedetto Vigna and John Elkann, they start becoming more and more visible in the motorhome, and once that happens, pressure ramps up, everything ramps up, and you just I don't know.
Yeah. I think,
that's the worry for me.
We've both been hurt by Ferrari too much to get excited about it, right? It's like, until it's like the third last race and they're smashing the titles, I think the two of us are like, give it time. Give it time. Because like everyone right now that I talk to who hasn't been watching for that long is kind of like, Ferrari could really, and I'm like,
not yet.
Give it time. Give it time. I think it could genuinely be last race of the season. Like, you know, Leclerc is like leading by 22 points going into Abu Dhabi. They've basically sealed up the constructor by like 40 points, and I'll be like, let's wait until the last lap before we get excited here. You know,
Oh, God.
like that's how crippling it's been being like a Vettel fan through.
I know the feeling. I know the feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, 2017, 2018 they were heartbreaks, and let's not talk about those years.
So like I think I'm a little bit kind of to go a quick run through. I'm a little bit concerned about Red Bull because I think Red Bull have clearly found some inherent issues with their build right now. And their concern is going to be that if McLaren make even one small step, we are screwed if we stay on this trajectory, and I think that Red Bull know that. The problem with that is I think they're going to have to fundamentally change parts of the car going into next year, and that
They're
is a
claiming
coin
they've
toss.
already done that.
And that's a coin toss, because if you get it wrong, then the immediate question is, right, do we even bother focusing on this year, or do we focus on next year?
Yeah.
So Red Bull's in that tricky position. Mercedes, I think, have nothing to gain, because I don't think they think they're going to be fighting for a title next year. I imagine most of their focus is on 2026. And if it isn't, it should be, realistically.
But Mercedes is not too far behind. It's half a second.
Which race? It depends on which race.
Pick anyone. I don't think the gap is more than half a second to the front.
Sure, but that's a long way to go in this this era.
I understand what you're saying, but the thing is, if this team can make that, half a second is not the kind of jump that is unfathomable. That's what I'm saying. And honestly, I'd be surprised if that happens. But if next season Mercedes is fighting for the title and we have Kimi Antonelli versus Lewis Hamilton, oh my God, that's cinema.
Incredible. Yeah, incredible.
Right.
Ferrari, I just don't. The reason I think it's going to be McLaren, I think McLaren are the ones to beat next year.
Yeah.
Is just because they don't need to change their concept at all. Like, their concept works perfectly. They understand their car concept. And the reason I think they have a deep understanding is because they were so careful about putting like the floor on until they knew it would work 100%, and when it went on, it worked exactly as expected.
Yeah.
So it's like these guys were so cautious, but also like, we'll wait until we know for sure. And when they knew for sure, they knew for sure. There is no guesswork. It's like, okay, that looks bad. When there was guesswork to the point where they could cut the guesswork out.
Yeah.
And the other teams don't seem to be able to do that. Red Bull could, but then something went kind of wrong for Red Bull.
Yeah.
And now we have to question, like, can they fix it themselves without Newey there?
I think my worry for McLaren is they can still self-sabotage. I think that worry will remain next season, probably until I think just like Lando Norris, Andrea Stella needs to go back, and he probably needs to actually have a chat with people like Jean Todt and Ross Brawn and try to understand their psychology, try to understand how they manage the team, because both have done that. And I think he needs to inculcate that into his strategy, because right now he's not. What the fuck does it mean that we were not even prioritizing the drivers' championship? I mean, that's the dumbest line. That's the line a loser makes, actually. It's basically I was you did not reject me, I was never pursuing you. That's the kind of statement that actually it comes down to.
Saying that made no sense, because it looks bad no matter how you present it.
Dissect it, yeah.
Because if you were saying that truthfully and you never thought about it, then you look like a moron, because you should have been thinking about it for at least half a season. If you genuinely meant that, if you didn't mean it and you're just saying it to save face, then you look terrible saying it. So I don't know. I tend to lean towards the fact that it was true.
View, by the way, on this. He said that according to him, it's because apparently Oscar is the chosen one, and McLaren did not want to, lean too much towards Lando and burn the bridges for next season. And while I don't agree with that kind of thought process, because you have here and now, you got to make the maximum. But maybe there's a school of thought which is probably there. But I don't know. I just think that after 20 years in Formula 1 and achieving the kind of success that Stella has in the different teams, him having this kind of attitude is shocking for me, at least. And I think the 2025 season will come down to how he manages the drivers. Because if both of them are taking points off each other, then it's just a waste of time. You cannot have a season like that. You just cannot.
Yeah, that's the thing. I am confident that I think McLaren will be the fastest car next year for most of the season.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they're going to win the title.
And I still won't be surprised if Max wins the title.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised, even if Ferrari are the fastest car next year, I wouldn't be surprised if Max wins the title.
Yeah.
I
agree. Anyways, a lot of topics discussed. Now we have, I think this weekend we begin the final triple header to the
Yeah.
end of the sprint to the end of
What
the season.
What's been your favorite Las Vegas Grand Prix?
Yeah, there have been far too many, right? I mean, but honestly, that was a good one.
It was
I
actually
didn't-
really good.
Yeah, I didn't. I just saw it before we started recording, and that was fun. That was a fun race. And again, Leclerc could have won, but the safety car timing and everything. It's just that overall, the racing bit, you can do multiple overtakes over a lap. If you've lost
Yeah.
position, you can gain it back. That long straight worked like a charm.
Yeah.
So yeah, there
They'll
are a lot
probably
of things.
shorten the DRS this year or something now. We'll probably find that out this week.
I hope
They'll make it like half the length or something,
Yeah,
you know.
don't jinx it. Don't jinx it, and don't give them ideas either. So, oh god, yeah. Now you made me worried.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. But I mean, what's your take on the track? I mean, other than the fact that under lights it looks the same as every other new track that is there in Formula One right now.
Genuinely, I was one of the biggest people coming up to it that was kind of like, oh, this is going to be terrible. Because just looking at the track layout, I was like, this is not going to work with these cars at all. Like, this is going to be terrible. Pleasantly surprised. So I'm excited to see it because it is kind of it's a one-off kind of show. Kind of like Monaco in some ways, where it's like, it's a bit of an outlier. It's completely different. No, Monaco's still better for me. I don't care what anyone says. Monaco's one of my favorite races. And I don't, and it's not a race. Yeah. It's just a procession. But
Exactly.
it's one of my it's my favorite procession of the year. Las Vegas is just a show. It's a bit over the top. I can't really stand Americans, so it kind of bugs me, but it's kind of a spectacle, so it's fine. Like if we had 4 of them, I'd be annoyed, but because it's only one of them, it's all right. And the racing turned out to be like very, very good. I think
good.
Even more so because our expectations were so low, it made it even better.
Max spent the entire weekend whining about the race.
Yeah. And then it turned out to be good.
Yeah.
So maybe this year, because our expectations now will be high, maybe it will be shit.
Yeah. Could be.
Maybe. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's an interesting one. Yeah. It's midnight for me, all of the sessions, which is a bit of a pain in the arse.
That's the best part for me, honestly. It's the race at 11 a.m. Perfect timing.
Yeah. Have a coffee or a beer and relax and watch it,
Yeah, no beer at that time. It's too early in the day.
For me, it's fine, but I'm Irish. We can drink whatever time.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's actually been said about Punjabis as well, but I refrain from that. Are we planning a watch along this time around? Or would it be viable for you?
Maybe. Let me get back to you tomorrow, but yeah, maybe.
The race is on Saturday American time, right?
Yeah, it's midnight Saturday for me.
Ah, thank God. Yeah.
So it's Sunday 11 a.m. for you, right?
Yeah. Perfect. I mean,
yeah,
couldn't be better. Honestly.
Let's do a watch along for one of them. Regardless, let's do
one of them.
Either practice qualifying or the race. We'll do a watch along for one of them.
Yeah.
Hopefully, let me see. Can I do the race? If not, I'll do qualifying. Something like that.
Yeah, let's plan.
Perfect.
We plan as the weekend goes on. Anyways, what do you expect the pecking order to be this time around?
Ferrari first, I think, this time.
Yeah.
I reckon it's going to be Ferrari, McLaren, and then Red Bull. I just think the Red Bull hasn't been particularly strong on the straights this year or with DRS, so I'm not expecting it. Like, if we look at Monza and Spa, Ferrari was Red Bull was like the third fastest car, and in both
Spa
of those
was
races,
fastest, right?
In qualifying trim, yeah. But then when it came to the actual race, it wasn't particularly good. And then there's parts of that as well where I think they kind of threw things away a little bit. The other teams, like McLaren, should have won that race, I think, and Ferrari maybe if Ferrari had ran it better, they could have been.
Ferrari has brought upgrades afterwards, right?
Monza was really good for them.
Yeah.
So I expected to be Ferrari, then McLaren, then Red Bull, then Mercedes, but
the thing is, what happens with a track like this is, I mean, we saw it last season as well. It would be dusty, grip would be very less. Then there's the unpredictability which comes from the kind of tires that they have, whether they'll work or not, because it's not a regular track. It's just the second race.
It's in the desert, so the temperatures are all over the place as well.
Yeah, it's supposed to be very cold this time around as well.
Yeah.
Apparently 10-11 degrees. And then again, even last season, what we saw, I think it was Alpine in P4 or P5, something like that. Williams was in top 10. Mercedes kind of struggled because of McLaren struggled a lot last season. So there are going to be
Norris
a lot
crashed last season, right?
Norris crashed, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of variables that are there, and I think the car that is able to generate temperature quickly, I think that might be a more
I think McLaren will be trying because they only need 20 points a weekend to win the title. So I think it's
not much. By the way, Max could win the title this weekend if he finishes ahead of Norris.
Yeah.
So
I actually think he doesn't even need to finish ahead of him, right? He needs to finish within like 8 points of him or something like that. Because he's 62 points ahead.
25 plus.
Oh, there's the sprint
59.
as well. I forgot about that. Yeah, I forgot about the sprint. So
he's 62 points ahead, right?
So he needs to basically be 3 points ahead of Norris, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. And
So
then
that's all he needs. Funny.
And Norris only needs to be 21 points ahead every weekend. So it's still very much on this championship fight. Yeah.
We'll see what happens there. I think it would be very close between McLaren and Ferrari because again the ability to generate temperature is going to play in the hands of McLaren at
seems
least
to
in
be better than
qualifying.
this.
At least in qualifying. And if that is the case, you might see maybe in the race you see Ferrari come back into the equation, but at least it's going to be a nip and tuck kind of thing. So let's see. What's your prediction for top 3?
I'm going to say it's going to be Leclerc, Norris, Sainz.
I think it's going to be Leclerc, Norris, Verstappen.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
And then I think in that case, if Max gets the fastest lap, he wins the title.
Yeah.
So I think there's a high chance he might seal the child. Not the child. Seal the
There's a good chance he might conceive a child that night. Yeah. 4 titles, another kid. Yeah. I
think we might see that happening. And who's the surprise pick of the weekend? Who is the one driver you think might do well here?
Franco Colapinto. Sergio Perez come back for 4th place. Max Verstappen will finish outside the points, and the title fight will be back on.
By the way, there's actually an outside chance for Mercedes as well, because lower temperatures tend to suit the team. Let's see. Maybe a George Russell or Lewis Hamilton win the race.
This season is absolutely brilliant because we are genuinely just picking names out of a hat here.
Yeah.
Like there's no real way of knowing.
And the thing is, we don't even the picks won't sound out of place because anything happens. Anything happens this season.
And it's not just like we're normally fairly informed fans that I know like in 22, 23 was obvious who was going to win every weekend, but generally speaking, I am quite good at going, I know roughly what the order is going to be, and it might be like one driver out of place or like a random DNF, but otherwise it's pretty spot on.
Yeah.
And then this season is like, don't know, this guy, like
maybe this works.
Colapinto win, who knows?
Imagine if that happens.
If Colapinto wins, he is alongside Verstappen.
Massive superstar. If he does do something, anything out of the ordinary, he's going to be a massive superstar.
If he got a podium in a Williams, that's it. He's alongside. He's either alongside Verstappen next year or he's in Albon's seat next year.
Yeah,
like one of those two things.
James Walsh is selling his kidney to keep him, and that won't be enough, by the way. But let's see.
Yeah.
Anyways, great chat. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Do tune in. We might do a watch along either in qualifying or in the race.
Yeah.
Let's see. See you around.
If we're doing it, I'll set it up as a live in advance, so you'll see it on the channel.
We'll let you know.
So
we'll let you know.
Yeah.
And thanks for watching.
We'll let you know.
Yeah. Drop a comment, and if you're offended, you're welcome.
Yeah. Good luck. Bye.